Yep, that's it. That's recording quite happily now.
Perfect. How about that?
There you go. Sweet as a nut.
I'm taking my glasses off now. I haven't seen you for ages, Steve. I really haven't.
You know what? It's taken like 30 years for.
Has it been that long?
It's
surely it's not been that long.
I mean, you started what in
1976?
Yes,
77. In fact, 77.
So, like when you actually think about it, you know, when you go back in time, because part of BizzHeadz is all about learning about the gurus themselves and seeing what familiarities they all have between each other. So I'm on a mission to find out what makes everybody within the entertainment industry tick, because being the largest, probably one of the largest industries in the world, entertainment employs millions of people. When you sort of sit back, Rick, and think down to the caterers, at these massive events, and we're all in the background. You're setting up the pyrotechnics and I'm setting up the lights, but behind there, we've had to fly there, haven't we, on an aeroplane? We've had to get truckers to truck it all in. It's a huge industry, isn't it?
Absolutely enormous. Absolutely enormous. But we guys, you and me, we all started from the mobile discotheque scene. Me, Roger Squires, Mick McManus, the guys from Pulsar, Neil Rice from Optikinetics. They were all doing all the bubbly light things in the old days. Pete Wynne Wilson, who was the original lighting designer for Pink Floyd. All that era.
Exactly. You know, I was sort of thinking back, just reminiscing last night, because I'm so excited to have you on my very first ever podcast. I mean, it's a very exciting thing, Rick, and I thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And I was thinking back when I was 17, 18, I'm 55 now, so I was going back some years, and I had the 2001 Space Odyssey Disco Roadshow, right? So I always thought big right from the very beginning. And I had a Citronic State Line. Top of the range Citronic State Line.
Absolutely, yeah, it was in those days.
I had the foul light boxes and all the gadgets that you can imagine, the fuzz lights and everything. But the big thing that I was so excited, couldn't afford one, but that was the P Super, the LeMaitre P Super. And we would go and rent one from the local rental shop, including the dry ice that you had to buy with it. And that would probably cost as much as we was getting for the gig, but it was about the passion. And that was the LeMaitre P Super, that was it. To get that smoke rolling across the floor was just...
Well, the P Super actually precedes me. Invented by Martin Blake.
Wow. Now, Martin
Blake was a strange character, as we all know. Everybody in the industry will remember Martin. Martin was... he'd been kicked out of his lodgings because he'd set fire to the curtains in a fit of pique and landed up on my doorstep. And he was Martin Blake Lighting Effects. And he was making those P Supers out of fiberglass in those days. And he'd also taken that into making vulcanized mirror balls, which I said would never sell. I mean, instead of having glass on them, they were vulcanized. Awful. But he sold a lot of those as well. And Martin descended on me and moved in, basically, because he didn't have anywhere else to go. And he also had a little idea up his sleeve, which was the Pyroflash system.
Okay.
He came with the Pyroflash system. And he was he's in my flat, and he said, "Can I use your phone?" Because he hasn't got a phone. So I said, "Yeah." He's on the phone and he bursts into tears and he said, "Right, that's me. I'm done. I'm finished." I said, "Martin, what's the matter?" He said, "I've developed this piece of equipment." He said, "Do you remember when we were I used to be the DJ at the Greyhound in Croydon, doing a lot of the heavy progressive stuff. People like Genesis and David Bowie, Roxy Music, Steel Ice Band, all those sort of people. And one of the bands that was, when we couldn't get anyone else, was Stray. And Stray used to have this song that they did was called All in My Mind. And at the end of that song, they had a great big piece of metal guttering across the front of the stage, which was full of loose flash powder, which you used to buy from Rank Strand, any place you could get it, and a loony roadie with a Zippo lighter. And as the finish of the song was a great big finale, this roadie chuck his Zippo at it, and the whole front of the stage used to go up in God knows how anybody ever survived it. Highly illegal. You couldn't do it now. And Blakey turned around to me and he said, you know, Rick, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And he came up with a pyroflash system. And we're sitting in the flat. He'd got the two-way system made. He showed me all this. The first time I'd seen it. And he was ringing up Astra Fireworks. Now, Astra Fireworks were the only people that could fill the actual little cartridges.
Oh, is that right? Is that?
So he was talking to a guy called Malcolm Armstrong, who's dead now, so we can't rely on him. And basically what Astra had said, yeah, Martin, it's a great idea. We're going to do it. And they refused to fill the product. And this is when he burst into tears. So he said, yeah, but this is what they don't know. He says, I patented it. And he had, unbelievably. Where he got the money from?
Martin had actually gone and patented this sort of pyro filling.
Pyroflash system. He patented it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And he patented the 2-pin system and the paper top. Doesn't sound much, but it was enough. So I basically got him. I was looking for finance for him. And it ended up that my wife, Maxine's father, there was this business opportunities thing that the government was doing then. And he had Martin in, and I said, look, he's got a great idea. Why don't you put him in this business community that you do? He said, yeah, okay. So I left them to it because I've known Blakey for a long time, even before this, and there's no way I'm getting involved. So I spoke to Harold afterwards, and I said, how'd you get on with old Martin? And he said, yeah. He says, yeah. He says, I like the idea. He says that I offered him, I'll take 51% and Martin can take 41%. He turned me down flat. So I said, okay, that's the end of that. A couple of weeks later, Blakey's turned up. He's at the house. And Harold says, oh, Martin has come here, wants a word. So I said, oh, yeah, okay. He said, right. He says, the idea is this, says old Blakey. He says, look, he says, Harold offered me a deal, don't want to take that. He says, but if you come in with me, we'll do a third. Okay,
so this is now the beginning then.
That's how LeMaitre started.
So the name LeMaitre, where did that come from? Where
Harold's company. Harold's company was, he used to make knockdown furniture for MFI, and it was called LeMaitre Contracts. Now, we were in the same building, a sawmill it was, and a garage. So we were above that, fiddling around with pyrotechnics. And we thought, well, if we call it LeMaitre, it was called LeMaitre Lighting and Effects in the old days. Yeah. And we thought, well, if we call it that, then when people look up for a credit reference, they'll see LeMaitre. And of course, Harold was turning over several, 20, 30 million pound a year. So happy days, instant credit. That was the reason. So that's how we started. And with it came the Pea Super. Yeah. So the first thing that we did was stop making it out of fiberglass because the guy was an absolute lunatic like Martin, and he couldn't, and it's a horrible job, fiberglass. Yeah. So we got it rotationally molded. So the Pea Super that you had was probably black, because in those days you could get it in all colors originally. What it
was a luxurious kettle, wasn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, it did have a kettle element, I'll give you that. It was, but it was quite clever because it designed. It wasn't just a question of chucking a load of hot water over a bit of dry ice. He'd actually worked out the volume of the container and the expansion ratio of the dry ice, and he'd actually done that. It wasn't as crude as you'd think it might be.
Well, I mean, it worked incredibly well, and it did such a fantastic job.
So it did. It did. Because you know that Henry Fenton Vile, who used to make guitars, and if you're into guitars, they're quite collectible now. But he brought one out and made them out of motorcycle panniers, which are made of fiberglass. And of course, they didn't work because the expansion ratio wasn't right. So Blakey was a clever little sod.
Yeah, so
he was horrible, but clever.
He had that magic then to turn.
He had the spark of genius, Martin. I will say that without any reservation. And with it came the spark of lunacy, which often happens with clever people.
Of course, it's that eccentricity, isn't it, that makes them...
Totally. And I loved him, don't get me wrong. And people used to malign him and all the rest of it. But Martin was never really a horrible, evil little sod. He was trying to be funny. Yeah. And he never was. and he always upset people. So, but that's how we started, just me and him in a factory above a sawmill.
There was your factory then. That was all set up.
That was in the Pearly Way. It was on the Pearly Way.
Is it really?
Yeah. So we got him. We got the money together, and we managed to. The first person that actually filled those cartridges was the Reverend Ronald Lancaster.
Is that right?
And he was the divinity teacher of Kimbolton School, and Ron filled the cartridges for us, and it hit the ground running. But we had to get someone that Ron couldn't do them. He was filling 2,000 a week, and we were selling, God knows, a lot more than that. And it really, right at the beginning, and we got a company called Haley and Weller to do it, and we were with them for quite a while. And it wasn't until, and again, they mess you around mercilessly, firework factories, because anywhere near November the 5th, and they're building their own stuff, and you can go and whistle. And that's why we built the factory in Peterborough. We built that in 1980.
When I sort of, when I came into play was 1990 when I started Abstract, April 1990. So we should be celebrating 30 years right now, although clearly we're not celebrating too much at the minute. But, the peers to the industry for me were Rick Wilson, Peter Johansson, Mick McManus, Adrian Brooks.
Yeah, Brooks.
John Petts, your competitor at the time with
Jam was a wonderful competitor.
Wonderful competitors. Paul Marston, for example, Pulsar. Derek from Pulsar. These were the guys that shaped the industry for me, and I'd walk around and be in awe. I mean, Peter Johansson for me, of course, is a lighting guru. That he was a massive inspiration. I wanted to be like that. Do you know what I mean? And create that.
Great man, Peter Johansson. I'd give you that.
Yeah, he is. And we at Abstract, we started very much like you did. As a cottage industry, really.
Winging a prayer.
Yeah, winging a prayer. And the first twisters that we made 50 twisters. And Mick Hanniford from Light Factor, he was the first customer, and he took the lot and he sold them in a week. And he came back. He said, "Steve, I want more." And I was building them in this garage of all places. Now, who would have thought, Rick, that people like you and I, like you said, mobile DJs, entertainers, okay, and we built multi-million-pound companies, and we built them on passion. It was never about the money for me. Was it you?
No, me. Never about the money.
I think when you saw like the firework displays going off and the pyrotechnics going boom, bang, wallop, that's what turned you on, wasn't it?
Well, it was a three-dimensional effect. That's why we loved it. Everything that we do was 3 dimensions. What you guys did was 2 dimensions, we always thought, till the lasers came out, which you could argue. But it was always, but we were always the exclamation mark on the end of a contract. They'd always get the lighting, they'd always get the sound, they'd get the tour all sorted out, and then they'd think, pyro. And of course, it was always a struggle to get the stuff on time, especially when the bigger bands started. We started working with the bigger bands.
I mean, some of those bands. I mean, just name me some of the bands. I looked on the website, and there was a Martin got a
Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Deep Purple. I mean, we've done all of them. Believe me. I mean, in the early days, we did a lot of bands. The only one we ever fell out with was AC/DC.
Why did you fall out with them?
The bell that they've got, big bell.
Yeah.
Well, Martin got that cast for them.
Really?
Yeah. And Martin had all sorts of weird contacts, and he got this bell cast for him. And it was a joke, but not a joke. And he said, "Oh, well, we've got the bell for you. Really rip you off on that," he said. And the band said, "What?" He says, yeah, we had it off with that bell. Why would you do that? And the fact of the matter was, we probably lost money on it.
Exactly. But
this was Blakey's sense of humour.
Sense of humour.
Never work with AC/DC again.
Proper eccentric Englishman.
You know what I had to do with him? Because he used to do all the buying. And he had names for everybody. The guy that did the metal work, his name was Dennis, and he called him Dennis the dog. The people that used to do the aluminium spinning was a company called Rapide. He called them Sloweed.
Right. Okay.
And in the end, nobody would deal with him. So I had to do all the bloody buying as well as all the selling. And it was at that point I got on the phone to Mick McManus.
What a
Said, Mick,
character. I mean,
Mick, you got to help me out here, mate. I mean, I've known Mick since 1972. I said, you got to help me out for a couple of months. I'm just dying here. And Mick said, okay, mate, I'll come and bail you out, as a good mate always would. And after 3 months, there was just no way we were ever going to work without him. And that's when he joined the company, became a quarter of it.
Because he became almost like, you know, from an outsider point of view, he became almost the face of LeMaitre, didn't he?
Absolutely. Well, he has the character for it, didn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to like look at him as he was LeMaitre's Mick Jagger.
Indeed, he was. Indeed, he was. He had a reputation to die for.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's got a story about Mick McManus.
Oh, absolutely. And when you go into a bar and there is Mick in the bar, that was it. That the whole room lit up, didn't it? It lit up by itself.
Absolutely. You walked into the room and it lit up. You're right. Absolutely.
And the barman they'd have a party anyway by themselves, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But moving forward, we go on down the line a little bit, and LeMaitre has established sales, like Abstract did. We started to sell. We did 300 grand in the first year, 800 grand in the second year, 1.3 million in the third year. I mean, these are madness numbers, and you would have followed very similar
pattern.
Yeah. And so, but you see, I've never really grown up. I refuse to allow Abstract to become a corporate-led machine or monster. I never wanted that. As much as I enjoyed the idea of having all the fancy things, I've owned helicopters and had them parked in my own garden. Do you know what I mean? All of that. I've done all of that. And now it seems, as I get older, it's not quite as important to me. But I like to reflect back on the industry, because the heartbeat of the entertainment industry has given me all the trappings in life. And as a very normal person coming out of a normal school, this industry has given me everything. And its heart stopped. COVID-19 has stopped this industry. The heart has stopped. And we've revived. We've got to revive. We've got to bring it back to life. And, you must now be in a multi-million-pound business in countries all over the world, including your own offices and factory now in America.
Yeah.
How does it feel, Rick?
It's a really difficult question to answer that, Steve. I feel totally not in control. I cannot control this. Problems that I've had in the past and you've had in the past, we've all had them, we've all made mistakes, we've all sat down and we've all rectified those, because that's the type of people we are. We find a problem, we work through it, we find a way around it. With this problem, there is nowhere to turn. I mean, the factory, there is no orders. I mean, there's no orders for your equipment. There's certainly no orders for mine. There's no bands touring, or the theme parks are shut. Even the Eiffel Tower's closed. I mean, there is no word. The orders are just not coming in.
I mean, how many people do you employ across all your sites?
About 130.
130 people.
Yeah.
Like myself, yourself, and any other major entertainment sort of entrepreneur, we don't just employ people, do we? We live their lives as well.
Families. They all depend on LeMaitre. They are a family. They are a family, and we've tried to look after them the best we can over the 40-odd years, and now we feel helpless.
And I guess we've had to do. We've had to furlough.
We've had to furlough, mothball the factories as you have.
Yeah.
But the problem arises when the furlough ends and they say, well, okay, now you guys aren't getting any furlough money. Now we've got to pay the guys again, which is fine, which we're happy to do. But are the orders going to come in? I can't pay people unless I'm selling stuff.
Rick, I had this exact same conversation with my missus last night, and I said to her, Angela, this situation, I know I've furloughed everybody. I know I'm covering the costs until I can get or regain that money back again. But that's not, that's what I'm not afraid of that. You know, I'm kind of in control of that because the government's saying, look, don't worry, we'll pay the furlough money. So that's, yeah, I can tick that box and say there's a security there. But I said to her, what happens at the end of June? You know, they'll all, unless they extend it, obviously, but at the minute we have to go by what we know now, and that's the end of June. Then they're all going to come off furlough. We're going to have to pay all the sales people again, all the manufacturing people. Everybody in our organization will want paying again. It'll be a huge amount of money. And we're going to have no income because we can't just switch a factory on and expect money within a week. It's going to take us 2-3 months to start flowing money back in. We're going to be 3 months down the line with huge salary bills. And I don't know about you, but because I'm a long-term employer like you, I've got people that have been at Abstract for 30 years.
Yeah, so have I, yeah, of course.
I can't afford to make them redundant because I wouldn't have the money to pay the redundancy fee.
Exactly our situation. Exactly that situation. You couldn't have, I mean, before the furlough thing came up, we thought, well, we're going to have to make people redundant. We'll have to because we can't afford to go on. I mean, the whole thing's going to collapse. But when you look at the redundancy money and how much that was going to cost, then you're thinking, you know, where's the nearest insolvency practitioner? That's the reality of it.
And that is a very terrifying thing for a company like LeMaitre, been around, 43 years,
yeah,
as long as it is. And it's heartbreaking, what you have done and what many other fabulous companies, like I'm saying, going back to the Martin Professionals, the Gems, the Pulsars, hopefully Abstract's played a part in that. But we've put our blood, sweat, and tears into the entertainment industry because we love it with a passion. We're passionate people. We started as DJs. So many of us started as DJs or singers or some random thing like that.
Yeah, like jockeys or DJs. Yeah.
So we've had to learn our business ethics along the way, and we've based that on the experiences that we've gained along the way, haven't we? And this, like you said just 2 seconds ago, when we've made mistakes, we've gone, okay, right, I'll sell the Range Rover then to pay for the mistake, or I'll go and earn 20 grand to pay for the mistake. So, okay, I've got this. I've got a handle on it. It's going to take me 6 months to get out of it, but it's my fault.
I can do it. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Yeah.
But with this one, I feel that we're all forced into a situation that is way beyond our skill set. We're going to make it our skill set because we're survivors. I'm sure you and I somehow will survive this. I still don't know exactly how that's going to pan out, but where there's a will, there's a way.
Well, we have looked at the bank loan, the government-sponsored bank loan. Now, the bank will lend up to £250,000 without PGs, personal guarantees. They're not making it easy, make no mistake. They, even though there's no PGs, they want to know the ins and outs of absolutely everything, to the point of how much do you spend on motoring going to work. It's that finicky. And we've been applying for this more or less since for about a month now. And every time there's something else. They want cash flow. How can you give a cash flow at the moment? How can you predict what's going to happen between now and December on a cash flow? It's just more or less impossible. That is really finger in the air stuff.
It's a total impossibility because, we don't know, just like the government doesn't know what's around the corner. We don't even know if this pandemic will come back when we release ourselves back into society. I mean, for me, from a personal point of view, and I think I stand for probably most of the industry in this saying, is that I would prefer to stay locked down, even if we lock down for 2 months, even if we lock down for 3 months, whatever it is. I would prefer to stay locked down, and then when we are released, then that's it, it's over. I don't want to be released in 3 weeks' time for it to come back again in 4 weeks' time.
Well, if that happens, Steve, it's all over. If we have to start shelling out money to pay for staff that are building stuff that there are no sales for, we're all done for. I can't see a way out of that.
No, and I can't see a way out of it either. And as a core manufacturer, I mean, we've been manufacturing in Great Britain, just like you have, for, in my case, 30 years, your case, over 40 years, 4 decades. When you think about that, it's an obscene amount of time to be a core manufacturer, getting over all the problems of components, buying all your components in, substituting components, getting certification for America, all the expenses that people just don't see. And this all comes on the back of making profit. We have to make, as an organization, between 15 and 20% profit is what we're looking for. We need that. And companies like yourself, you've got a bit of fat on your back, because 40 years of putting a little bit away every year, it equals a reasonable amount of money. But in this situation right now, I can see the bank balances going down so fast.
Yeah. You see, we invested a huge amount of money in the States building a factory in Missouri. And we've been doing that over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, a lot of money being plowed into that. With the benefit of hindsight, I wouldn't have done it. But, an investment is an investment. You invest. That's what you do.
See, I mean, it's like people, it's like Virgin, Richard Branson, for him right now, it's a nightmare, isn't it? Because he's got himself into cruise ship entertainment, right? He's got himself into airline. Well, it's all part of entertainment, getting people here, there, and everywhere. It's all the same. It's all interconnected. Now, he's built himself a massive brand new cruise ship. And it was supposed to launch now. He's got to put it back for 6 months. Now, that's a problem, isn't it?
Well, even he's struggling, I think. I was reading in the newspaper today. I mean, he's sticking Necker Island up for a guarantee, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And everyone's, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Richard Branson. I respect him for what he's done. Why wouldn't you? But, his billions are all tied up in, it's not liquid cash. It's not. So he's got to then now cash in to pay. Now, who's buying? Nobody's buying, Steve.
No, nobody's buying. I mean, let's call it hour one, shall we? Now, let's fast forward. We've pressed Control Alt Delete, and we've got rid of the last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, however long this hell is going to continue for. And hour one, the very first hour and the very first day that you go back to work, what do you see yourself doing? What would that first hour be like in your head?
Going back to work when it's all, hopefully, wondering how the hell that we're going to make the stuff that people now are wanting, because everything's opened up again. Manufacturing safely and quickly to produce the stuff that's required. I mean, that will happen as soon as the theme parks open. The orders start coming in as soon as the theatres start opening. Hopefully, the pantomime season will happen. We start building for the season really in about June, July. We start stockpiling at this point for all the pantomimes, for how the industry works. So that's what we will be doing, and hopefully people will go out and see the shows and be the way that it was. If they don't, then we're stuck with an awful lot of product that we've paid to be manufactured that is going nowhere. So the biggest thing that I'll be doing is to try and make sure that come the day that we can supply the stuff that people want quickly.
And of course, I think the biggest fear when speaking to my brother, who is head of abstracts, he's kind of running. I'm semi-retired now because I've got more into radio. I'm very much a radio host and loving every moment of it. And it's been a lifetime passion to go back into DJing. And
that's right. Every DJ that wants to be on the radio. Yeah,
that's exactly what I did. It took me a couple of years, and abstract helped me to get through the door of the radio station, because of course the DJs or the presenters and the radio controllers, they all remember using abstract lights back 20, 30 years ago. So it didn't get me on the radio, but it certainly got me through the door to get a cup of coffee.
Well, that's the truth. Well done.
But that passion. So Dave, my brother, I've had a very long conversation with him, and what he says now goes. And I've said to Dave, right, you need to keep the factory just ticking over. 4 people, that's it. You, Glenn Bancroft, who's been with me for 30 years, Jane Bruin and her son Dylan Bruin being, they live together. So it makes sense that no one's going to infect each other if they live together. So they've got their own room, they've got the entire factory to those two people. Then Dave's got his own room in the PCB assembly plant. And then Glenn's got his own area in the R&D and the metal facility. And they are just ticking away. Call it the toy toys, the hair and the toy toys. They're being now the toy toys. And Abstract is just bumping along the bottom, just putting some baseline product together for when we reopen the door, that we can, we've got something to shove out. And we've done it based on what orders we've had in the past, what we hope the customers are going to want in the future. And we've tried to do it educatedly, because I don't want to lose the machines, because once the machines get switched off for 3 months, they're hard to switch back on again. They don't want to start punching again. The seals go, and you know what I mean? It's all the silliness. So we're trying to, while we can, just keep it ticking over. We're not going to make any money, but the idea is that when we do open again, we can at least, hit the ground rolling, but
that's what we have to do.
My biggest fear, Rick, is this, and this is my honest, 30 years of experience is telling me something that scares me shitless. And that is that a restaurant, let's say that they buy my LED lights to stick in the cove. Let's just take that as an example. They're not going to be thinking about my lights when they reopen that door. They're going to say, right, our capacity is 200, our covers is 200. We can only have 50 people now in the restaurant because we've got a social distance, 2 meters apart, 1 meter apart, whatever the law ends up being. How can they make any money when they're used to making money on covers of 200, not covers of 50? Let's say in your game, you open up an arena for some tour or something. Somebody decides, yeah, we'll give it a go. So it's going to be 1 seat, 2 seats missing, 1 seat, 2 seats missing, 1 seat, is it? It's going to be like that to start with, because who even the airlines have turned around and said, I think it was Ryanair, have said, right, well, when we reopen, we're going to do, 1 sitting down, 2 seats missing, 1 sitting down, 2 seats missing. And that's how they're going to fly the airplanes. But that's not going to make any money, is it?
No, it isn't. And with lighting, I understand your point with the, and certainly the lighting that you're talking about, but I really am the exclamation mark on the end of the contract. And if they need to cut something, it'll be me.
And that's a worry when you're such a 100 and
you've got to have sound, you've got to have light.
You have. I mean, the only thing that maybe just the glimmer of hope is not. I don't want to put a downer on the industry. I mean, that's not what it's about. We're trying to, we want to hit the road running and come back again with massive strength. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that when people do go back into the theatre, they're going to want to be entertained like never before. They're going to want to expect people to go absolutely over the top. And, Pyros is over the top, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's over the top.
So, confetti cannons, it makes excitement. It makes happiness. Yeah. And I think that the core will be on making people feel free, making people feel happy. So I do feel that there's a chance for you, Rick.
Oh, listen, I'm giving you the bad vibes as well, but I have to say that underneath all this, I'm fairly buoyant. I think it will happen because I've seen it happen before. In the late 80s, remember that awful time in the late 80s? Mm. And we're the first ones to suffer, and my God, we certainly have. I've never had no orders, but we're also the first to recover.
I don't want to hang on this too much, but it's part of your history, so I want to cover it off. And the 3rd of October 2018 was a bad day, wasn't it?
It's an awful day.
You had an explosion, didn't you, at the factory?
It knocked me off my feet when I heard it. It knocked me off my feet. Accidents are what they are.
They are, and you're in
I'm in a dangerous business.
You are in a dangerous business, but more so, you're in a dangerous business, but you're in a dangerous business for a purpose, and people want to be entertained. People expect to have fireworks. People expect to have pyrotechnics, and somebody has got to make them, Rick. And it was your your day that you decided, right, that's it, we're going to go into the pyrotechnics business?
Yeah.
Yes, there was always that risk, like in any, anybody that's got any massive machinery, there's that risk. A hose could blow off a punching machine, and rigging, holding riggers, rigging stuff. You with me? It's like the whole thing now has gone that way. But I suppose it's had to, because if you look at the size of some of these venues, like the Olympics or any of these massive stadiums, it's unprecedented how much equipment, the speakers, they must weigh tons and tons and tons, and they're all hanging there on bits of and bits of truss that's probably been made by by people like Light Structures and stuff to a very high standard. I mean, do you remember Adrian Brooks and Light Structures? I mean, that's
you know how that started, don't you?
No.
That was started by Optikinetics. Optikinetics went to Adrian Brooks, who used to make scaffolding, and they'd met somewhere, I don't know what. And what he was doing a roadshow to sell his projectors, old Optis. He says, but what we're going to do, we're going to go on a roadshow and we're going to sell projectors all around England. I need some sort of stuff I can hang it on. So Adrian says, well, hey, okay, I can knock that up for you. And what Adrian had knocked up was the prototype Tri-Light. Right, so he made this for Neil Rice, and Neil Rice went on tour with it. And after the tour, Adrian said, how did you get on? He says, well, don't know, wasn't much interested in the projections, but they were really interested in that trussing you made. I'd like to buy some. So originally, Adrian made, and Adrian's the one that designed it, make no mistake. Everybody can claim about the way that trussing is made. Adrian designed that. And Adrian was the father of it. And Optikinetics patented or registered the name Tri-Light, which is why when they eventually fell out, as these things often happen in business, Adrian could never use the word Tri-Light.
So Optikinetics. So Neil Rice has got him a little bit by the short and curlies on that.
Well, he had on the name Tri-Light, but what happened was they started to make it in Canada, which was, I don't know. Listen, I don't know about what arrangements they had, but Adrian never saw the funny side of it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So that's why that stopped. But Adrian designed it, and Optikinetics were the first to stick it on the market.
But the industry is certainly not laughing anymore, are they? Because
No.
Adrian has gone on to become incredibly successful. I mean, he, with that production park that he owns and the stage rehearsals.
I was sitting talking to him a couple of nights ago. It just never changes. I actually said to him, Adrian, I said, you're either going to be a very rich man or very skint. And that's when he first showed me the model of the rehearsal rooms.
I remember that. He had it at Plaza, didn't he?
He did.
And he said there was a little H on the top, and he said, Steve, I've made that on there for you, so you can come and land on it. And there it was. It's like it was in a case, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it cost him $2,000.
So he was showing off all his trussing. And then there was this random model of a studio. And I said to him, what on earth is this? This thing is my latest dream.
Only Adrian. And listen, he's great company, but he is a real face of the industry. You couldn't do without people like him.
Oh my goodness, no, absolutely. And he, the stuff, the sort of, every Plaza, I bet he used to think, oh no, not Plaza again, because Steve's going to come.
I used to love it. I used to love it until I lost the faith with it, because it wasn't. At the end of the day, you've got to look at what's the exhibition doing for me? Is it getting me new clients? Is it selling me more product? Is it giving me extra exposure that I wouldn't normally have had? And when those three answers are no, you don't do that exhibition anymore. And that's when I pulled out.
And that's exactly when we pulled out. We pulled out because they started saying, right, you got to turn the volume down on the speakers. Okay, right. Now you got to start to dim the lights because they're too bright. All right, okay. And so and don't forget, we were used to having sort of scantily clad women on the stage. And
you were, I know, it's a great show, yours always.
But I remember there was this banner in Rimini for clay packing. It said only clay packy is better than Clay Packy. And so then we made a banner for Plaza and we put on it, only big tits and beer is better than abstracts.
You were famous for it. You know, when we used to get bored, Mick and I, right, down the abstract stand.
And it was, and that's it, you see, and that legacy there is something that it will never be forgotten, because they were the true fun-loving, the fun-loving sort of Plaza years before it got too sensible and too serious and too.
It did get very sensible, didn't it?
Commercialized, Yeah. And
well, it's the Robé show now, isn't it?
It is, and it all got too expensive.
Oh, it's ridiculously expensive. I mean, when you looked at how much you spent on the show, and you say, well, what are the returns on that? And I know we're not sort of talking money here, but we're talking about what we do with our available cash flow. Plaza will have cost, well, me a lot less than you probably, but 40,000 quid.
I mean, I was just about to say that the cost, I remember writing the checks for it, the cost were like £60,000.
Is that with all the infrastructure and all
that'd be 60 grand with getting Brooksy to come and do the trussing and all
that.
And the rental of all the black cloths and all the, the sound system and all the stuff you needed. It was about 60 grand, but then
the hotels and the booze.
Oh yeah, they're on top.
So it's an expensive thing. And you as MD, you have to warrant that to your people. So
of course, if Mick McManus showed up,
none.
And like if Mick McManus showed up, the bill would go up another $5,000.
God, but when we had it at what's that place in Hammersmith? It was that hotel that we had it in there.
What's that called? I can't remember that now.
It might have been before your time.
It would have been because I started in 1990, which was pretty much the Plaza.
Where did you first exhibit?
Plaza was my first.
Where was the venue?
Oh, Earl's Court, I think it was, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Earl's Court. Oh no, well sorry, well before your time then. Well, Mick actually managed to trash the entire. He was found in bed with the fridge. And I said, why do you do that? He says, because it's warmer than my wife.
What the heck? That's just fantastic, isn't it? You see that is the industry, though, isn't it? That's the industry.
That was the industry.
Yeah,
that's when Brooksy smashed through. The bar was shut, and it was a big glass door. And Brooksy decided that the bar was going to be open, so he held a fire extinguisher through the door.
That's it. I remember one morning coming down from the hotel room. We'd all obviously got incredibly inebriated till like 3-4 in the morning in
Absolutely.
the local hotel. And we came down, and my brother Robert, who was my sales director, he said, Steve, we can't go downstairs for breakfast because, do you remember last night? I said, I can't remember any, Robert. He said, well, we trashed the reception of the hotel because we threw all the plant pots into the fountain. And now downstairs are 5 people rescuing the goldfish. And cleaning all the jets out. He says, so we can't show up because there's cameras everywhere and they're going to know it's us.
You were the Keith Moon of the industry.
I mean, can you just, like you just couldn't do it anymore, could you? It'd be physically.
No. It's terrible. I mean, if people listening to this podcast will think, well, how did these guys ever make any money? It was just impossible if they acted in this irresponsible way.
That's right. And I remember many, you learn these things later on, don't you? But people used to say at the beginning, Steve, we never expected you to get anywhere because we thought you was kind of like the Joker of the industry. You just didn't seem to be taking anything seriously at all. And myself and my brother, Rob, we talked about that. And he said, Steve, you were the silent weapon because we would use you as the front man. And to act the fool and to goat around, and then behind that we would go and nick all the work.
Mick was a great door opener. I mean, people would see you because he's a laugh. Let's get him on board, and so he did us a lot of favors, Mick.
And that's what you need, that, don't you? Because these people are what make the industry so spectacular. I mean, all the rock bands, and they're all maniacs at the end of the day, aren't they? They've all got issues, haven't they? But the minute they get on that stage, that's it. They're on, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
no
yeah.
time.
Well, we were always on. I mean, you were out till 4 or 5 in the morning at Plaza. You were on the stand, booted and suited the next day, though.
Exactly.
Always, as I was, never missed.
And it wouldn't matter, you know. I mean, I think the younger generation. Not, I don't want to knock them or anything like that, because there's a lot of talent. I've got some incredibly talented designers, 3D CAD modelers, which are faster than you know anything I could ever imagine. But they have a totally different, you know, stance on life than what you and I would have.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a different world, Steve. Listen, I was talking to Mick yesterday. We had the best of it, believe me.
I think we had a fantastic time, you know.
We did, really. I mean, maybe it's payback time now.
I think it is, you know. And I think just finally, before we sort of finish up, I just, you know, I'd love to sort of look back there and say, what has been your proudest moment? What has been the biggest thing that you've ever achieved in LeMaitre? What do you think that is?
You know, I look back. I think the proudest thing that I ever did, or I ever felt that we were involved in, was the Pink Floyd Momentary Lapse of Reason tour.
Wow.
I mean, we really did that well. We got the stuff to where it was supposed to go. The product worked fabulously well. There was loads of problems one way and the other. They were a great band to work with. Out of all the things, I mean, there are lots of things, but I think as far as an achievement concerned, I think that is up there.
That's absolutely brilliant. And what is, you know, to date, the biggest selling LeMaitre product in the world?
By a long way, the pyrotechnics. At the moment, we do a daylight smoke mine.
Yeah.
So basically, we can do. The trouble with fireworks is no good in the day.
No, of course
We've developed, and we're the only company in the world that does it. We've developed a coloured smoke mine.
So it's like a daytime firework, basically.
Which you can shoot during the day and makes fantastic show.
So that's a whole new era there, isn't it?
That's a whole new thing, you know. And Disney have bought into it, and you know, that's a really making new product like that. And the other thing is, of course, is that the days when you first would have been using it, there was a lot of smoke. And the other thing, the big thing, of course, has been getting rid of the smoke, which is difficult with fire.
It's very, very, very difficult as well. Now, you know, talking about smoke, the G300, has that been a massive product?
Massive, huge product. And it really is. I remember when we first launched that, and I remember and I'll tell you who it was. He was the guy from, who was the guy that did all the design for high-end systems? What was his name?
Oh, you know what? You put me on the spot now.
Batty is a fruitcake. He was he came around and looked at it. He said, "This is what all smoke machines will look like in the future." It was totally without precedence. It was the first digital machine. It still is. It's the only low pressure machine. That's why it's so powerful. All the other ones are high pressure. I can get more out of that G300 than anybody else can get out of a three-phase machine.
Yeah. And finally, what would you say out of all the years, who has been your biggest competitor, your biggest thorn in the side over the entire?
Oh, Nigel Morris, but loved every minute of it. I wouldn't have changed any of that. And he sued me for libel.
Really?
Yeah, he sued me for libel. Well, there was a big thing in the old days where everyone was using ethylene glycol in smoke machines. So we all decided, well, it's a bit of a nasty old product. We won't do that anymore. So we all sat down and agreed we wouldn't. And so, being who I am, I thought, I wonder if everybody isn't doing it. So I tested them all. And of course, Nigel's came up as ethylene glycol. And I wrote to, who was it in Plaza, and said, you know, we agreed this, blah, 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 blah. And Nigel hasn't done it, you know, and then gave them the description of ethylene glycol, which is not a nice product. And I had it done. It was a top class. It was a company called Caleb Brett, top analyst in England that had analysed this. Anyway, got it wrong.
Oh, you're
Also,
joking.
I haven't been using ethylene glycol at all. And Kelly Brett said, oh, sorry about that, we got that wrong. And 3 or 4, I think it was 4 years later, he sued me for libel. It's called piercing the veil. You can't sue a company for libel, but because he said he was the figurehead of Jam, and everybody knew Jam as Nigel Morris, you could pierce the veil. So it was him personally that I was calling a poisoner.
I mean, at the end of the day, he got a point, didn't he, really?
Well, he got, I think we settled out of court. Well, I can't tell you the figure, but we had to settle out of court.
I mean, you know, you went out of your way to get it tested. You went out of your way to write to Plaza and tell him how bad his...
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then you got
Then
it...
I get sued. I want to try and do people a favour because I didn't want kids to grow up with 2 heads.
Well, that's absolutely right. So, I mean, yeah, no, it was all in for the right reason. So did you go back and sue the company?
And listen, was there a bit of point scoring there? Of course there was. It was because that's the way it was with me and Nigel.
Yeah.
And listen, at the end of the day, he came out on top, and he got a decent payout for calling me a poisoner, which I never did. But listen, it never broke the bank, and everybody was happy. So.
Well, it's been a fantastic story to tell, Rick, and thank you so much for
Steve. Pleasure seeing you.
Being my very, very first episode 1, series 1, episode 1.
Series 1, episode 1. Great stuff. All right, mate.
All the best, and have a fantastic day. Enjoy the sunshine, and
I hope to see you in the flesh.
Absolutely, and I wish you, of course, the greatest of futures. And now being an optimist and always looking for opportunity, right? Now, if Abstract was to make a fantastic product for stage, do you think you might want to buy it?
Listen, I've got an American company there that I sell a lot of stuff that's not mine in America.
Really? Fantastic.
I do.
You know what? It's been a pleasure, and thank you.
It's
so
always
much.
a pleasure, Steve. Lovely to see you, man.
I hope we talk again very, very soon. Bye.
So do I.